Hi, everybody who's joining us. We are live from Buggy One. I'm Alysa McCall with Polar Bears International. I'm a staff scientist and the Director of Conservation Outreach. And joining me is...
I'm BJ Kirchhofer, and I'm the Director of Field Operations for Polar Bears International and the Captain of Buggy One today.
Awesome. Well, thanks for bearing with us as usual as we get these cameras up and running. It's always, there's always something that comes up, but we're glad that you're here with us now and that we're live. We have a polar bear just outside our window, just to our left here. We were trying to get this internal cam on it, but the window's just not quite aligned. But if he moves, we promise that we'll get an eye on him. He's the same one that you guys have been seeing on the Tundra Buggy cam. So he's a big male. A little thin, but looking not too bad, and he's just pretty lazy today, hanging out, isn't trying to stay away from the buggies. He's been around the lodge and us for a lot of the day, so it's pretty fun watching him. We'll see if he does anything.
We could maybe back the buggy up, Alysa, if we want to do that quick.
Cool.
Get him on the cam. Should we try that out?
Sure. Yeah, if you guys want to come for a ride.
Yeah, let's just move the camera here.
See how this works.
And this is kind of how it works out here. Buggy One is totally mobile, and we have a wireless link that will take and send the video signal from here to the lodge and back into town and then out in the internet so you guys can see. So when we have bears around, then we pan the camera and focus on them. But when the bears move, which is pretty often, then we pick up and we motor down the road and try to find another polar bear. So why don't we show what we do?
Cool. You guys can see how this works.
Pretty short trip, Alysa.
Our few feet across the tundra.
We're just going to fire up here.
It's a little bit loud inside.
Hold on tight, everybody.
Sometimes we really do have to hold on really tight. There's a few big bumps out here.
You can see we're just really flying.
Yeah, what's the top speed on this bad boy?
No, I think if we were going 25 miles an hour, we'd be going really fast.
I can't even imagine going 25 miles an hour in this thing. Oh my gosh. Sorry, it's a she. You're right. Buggy One, I guess, is a she. Neutral. Gender neutral buggy.
Okay, so now we
Cool.
can try to find.
All right, let's see if we can see this guy.
Camera. We're just bumping that over.
We'll just scroll around. This is what our cam ops do all day. They operate the cams, trying to look for polar bears.
There's a bit of delay on it for some reason.
Interesting. It's never quite as easy as it seems it should be right off the bat. But out there, you guys can see Hudson Bay, the tundra, the
Some
flats
tidal
there.
Flats right there.
Yeah.
A lot of this area right here has a lot of mud flats. I'm sure you've seen. Once the ice comes in, then all those little tidal flats will be just covered in snow and ice. I don't know if you can hear the radio calls there in the background. The buggy drivers up here all have a pretty good sense of humor. And everything has a code. So the code that just came in was Joanne Pants Off. And basically, a Joanne is an Arctic fox. And No Pants Lake is a place here. Uh-oh, I'm not sure we backed up far enough, Alysa. That's kind of embarrassing. I've been doing this for a while, too. I thought for sure we'd see that bear.
This is your 9th year driving Buggy One, you're saying?
Yep, but I got another trick up my sleeve.
All right, we're going to see what BJ can come up with right now. He's pretty handy out here. Oh, we're going to move the cam. So this Buggy One cam can move up and down, and then we can also swivel it. So it gives us a few different options for views. And so BJ's going to play with that and see if we can't readjust. Oh, there it goes.
Nice and low. So this test. Okay. Guess we got the audio back maybe. Jonathan, we'll just keep talking here. We're getting levels on our end. It's kind of interesting. I'm not sure what happened there. Anyways, back we are, Alysa and I, on Buggy One. And we're looking for that polar bear.
Yeah.
So this is kind of just a small example of how the polar bear the polar bear cam works here. Just a behind the scenes of our adventures here.
Yeah, we're just going to check that Getting good messages. Our audio's good now.
Yeah.
Cool.
Looks like it.
So we just finished having lunch. I'm sure that the viewers can see that we have a few people in the background here, and we'll bring you around and introduce you to everyone. Buggy lunches out here are made for us by the Tundra Buggy Lodge, owned by Frontiers North Adventures, and we are oh so grateful that they provide us with hot soup and sandwiches and all sorts of good snacks. One of the things that's pretty fun to do out here, we have a big stove heater in the background. You guys can't quite see it. It's just behind us here. It keeps us warm. And if we wrap our sandwiches in tinfoil, we can kind of have a melted tundra sandwich. So that kind of helps keep the chill away on cold days. But today's actually not very cold. It's pretty nice out there. Not windy at all, which is kind of nice. Pretty rare for this time of year. It often gets pretty darn windy. So how about we go around and let's talk to the people we have here. BJ, is there anything you want to say more about Buggy One before we start chatting to our guests?
I don't think so. I think we can answer questions along the way if people want to chat them in or however that works. But maybe we can do a tour here.
Sure, yeah, we'll give you guys a little tour. I've been teasing BJ that he's a total hoarder, so I'll show you some of the stuff he has laying around up there. Yeah, so unfortunately, our lovely KT Miller with PBI is not here. She's a great set stylist. She always makes sure we're all cleaned up and the buggy's looking awesome when we do live chats, but she's not on Buggy One today, so it's a little bit, we tried to clean up though. It's looking pretty good. It's just a lot of people in here, so it gets a little bit crowded. Okay, you guys ready? Okay, I'm going to move over here. Hello. All right. So everybody, well, I'll let them introduce themselves. How about? So this is our moderator for this week on Tundra Connections, which is our educational programming.
My name is Jennifer, and speaking of high winds, I came from RV at Nunavut last week, and it took almost an extra day to get here because of the winds. So they're not kidding when they say that the winds can get pretty strong.
Pretty darn cool. So Jennifer, can you talk to us a little bit about what you do in RVIT and the organization that you founded and run now?
Yeah. Well, the trip last week was my second time up in RV at Nunavut, and the organization that I started 15 years ago when I was 19 is called Taking It Global. And our whole mission is empowering youth to understand and act on global challenges. And we believe in the power of leveraging people and communities and technology to come together and create the world that we want to see. So it's really exciting to be here this week. It's our third year partnering with Polar Bears International, actually, but my first time out on the buggy. And we work on really exciting projects. Actually, one thing we just finished, just as we were setting up for this time with you, is something called Global Encounters, where we talk to students from classrooms in Peru, Ghana, the United States, and in Canada, in Edmonton. And we're working on a whole project. It's called Decarbonize, involving youth voices, understanding climate change and the impacts of climate change, and giving input on the climate change negotiations coming up in Paris. So we like to give youth voice at the local level, and we do a lot of arts-based work, and then also linking to international perspectives and UN processes and policymakers. And I'm talking here to my new friend, Jack. We just met this week, and he's talking to me about the walrus. We're looking at the walrus here.
So I asked all our panelists to check out other Explore.org cameras. So, of course, we have the 5 polar bear cams around here, the Tundra Buggy 1 cam, the 2 Cape cams, and the 2 Lodge cams. And so I asked everyone to take a look at Explore's other cams and choose their favorite. And I got to tell you, the walrus cam is a pretty big hit. It's one of my favorites.
The screen is frozen.
You might have to hit refresh. Sometimes we have some bandwidth.
Make that.
Well, it's a good time to introduce you to our next panelist, Jack. Jack, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do?
Yes, I'm token minority, and no, actually, my name is Jack. I'm from Northern Alaska, born and raised. Work in domestic international policy development. But they let me know that we can sort of take a different approach to this webcast or whatever it is, so I can be a little candid. Anyways, nice to have you with us.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jack. Yeah, so we've been doing Slightly more formal webcast this week, but we really love our Explore audience and being able to, just kind of chat about what comes to mind and hear about what you guys want to hear about. And so one thing that I know you guys were talking a little bit about is how important the walrus is in subsistence hunting in some northern communities and the conservation around walruses and keeping them in the Arctic. Is there anything you want to speak to about that or your experience with anything like that?
Well, I think it'd be best if we see if we have any interest from our audience if they want to hear about it first.
Sure. So if you...
They may want to go through a couple more repetitions of backing up and going forward in the buggy.
You guys, you let us know. Let us know. Do you want us to drive around in buggy one a bit more? Do you want to talk to Jack about walruses? Just send us your questions, and we will do as asked. So we're going to come back to you guys. I'm going to introduce you to the next couple panelists. So in the corner, we have Jarrett. Jarrett, can you let us know a bit about yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Jarrett. I'm the executive director of an organization called the Youth Arctic Coalition, so I work with young people who live in all 8 of the Arctic states. I'm also a full-time student at the University of Ottawa in Canada. I study political science and public admin. Between those two things, that's just about all I do. So,
Awesome. Well, thanks, Jarrett. And what camera? Jarrett is watching the kitten cam?
I am watching the kitty cam. I miss my kitties at home, so I was flipping through them and I saw this one and had to stick with it.
Well, that kitten cam is pretty darn cute. So Jarrett's really one of our youth voices this week, speaking on behalf of youth, and he's actually off to Finland next week to do more cool stuff, so he's quite the traveler. And then over here, some of you may have met Dr. Jen Kay just a couple days ago when we pulled her into our first live chat of the season. Dr. Jen, can you reintroduce yourself for those that may have missed it?
Yeah, so hello, I'm Jen Kay. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Colorado, and I am really enjoying myself this week. It's quite a change of pace from being on campus and teaching the undergrads and doing research, just enjoying the bears. And, well, I guess right now I'm enjoying bears both outside my window, polar bears, and then bears in Katmai National Park on one of the Exploreorg cams. So I'm getting my bear fix today.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Jen. I know when Jen first pulled up, the brown bear camos in the back, and we just heard kind of giggles and laughter, and I guess the mom was playing with their cub, and so that's been very enthralling, as of course the brown bear cams always are. I saw one question earlier before we started the live chat. It was if this polar bear has a name out here. I know that in Katmai, it's easier to identify the brown bears, and so a lot of the bears kind of have names that people know them as, and you're able to see these interactions. This area is very different in the way that it's really a migration, so the bears are moving through here. It's a short period of time, and a lot of them don't have enough distinctive characteristics for us to really either get to know them or name them, so we don't really do that. One of the ways we do follow who they are is that scientists who do mark recapture programs will mark each bear they capture with a specific number, and then they can refer to that number again and again and just identify the bear that way. So if you would like to call this bear something to yourself, that's awesome. Go for it. But right now, he doesn't have a name to us. He's just going to be our lodge bear for now. So, all right. I'm going to check if we have any questions coming in yet. I don't see any yet. Might be because we started really late. Okay. Does anyone want to talk about your experience being up here? Or who wants to chat? No? Anyone?
Well, I can talk.
Jenna is great at talking.
You know.
Yeah, you are. You're here. I'm going to pull up a chair.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Tell me about Arviat.
Yeah. Well, no, what I was going to say was that I guess I had seen a polar bear once in a zoo, which is very different. Maybe I can even ask you some questions of my own experiences. Well, last week, on the day that my flight was delayed, so I was actually supposed to be here, but I was still in Arviat, and we went out for a drive. I had a really close view of a mama polar bear, and her 2 baby cubs, and it was beautiful to see them. The one thing that made me sad was that they were near the garbage, and they seemed kind of hungry, and so they were walking up to the garbage, and then they saw a few of us watching. I think there might have been. Maybe there was like someone who works on polar bear alerts up there. And then the mama bear looked at us and we looked at the bear and then she went back So I was just curious if you could tell me anything more about that, polar bear encounters with people or with garbage.
Well, I can talk a bit about it, and then Jack might want to chime in too with his experience. I know that back, 15, 20 years ago, there was also an open dump in Churchill, and it was a major bear attractant, and that's why a lot of bears came into town. There's a lot of human bear conflict, and they simply, they're on land in the summer. They don't have a lot of food sources, and they've got great noses, and they're going to smell out where the good smell and stuff is for a polar bear. So that's since been closed up in Churchill. And that event, along with the Polar Bear Alert Program really taking off here, which is a system that Manitoba Conservation uses to help keep the polar bears out of town and away from humans, which is better for bears and humans, has really cut down on the number of conflict issues. But, Churchill is such a place where, compared to other places in the north, there are a lot of resources here, and it's a lot more accessible than a lot of areas in the far north. And so there are areas that are struggling with this human-bear conflict or even other wildlife issues. And so we're actually, there are some efforts right now to help Arviat in whatever way is best that they want to be helped, whether that's monetary or human resources or whatever, but just to help them out with that human bear conflict stuff, because they are seeing a lot more bears in their community. It's not safe for the kids, it's not great for the people, and it's not great for the bears, and we don't want that to become a terrible issue. We don't want anything bad happening up there. So
One thing I found out is that they had to cancel Halloween last year, so kids couldn't go out to trick or treat. And but what they did to accommodate, because they were worried to have people running around with candies, and I know that bears have an incredible sense of smell, so to not be attracted to the candy, they actually have a big party in the hall there. So Halloween's indoors. But it was a good first encounter. The other thing I noticed at the airport was not having food out in general, and just because their sense of smell is so strong. Right. Yeah.
Interesting. Jack, do you have anything to add on human-bear conflict?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, as we mentioned earlier, that others here are looking on web pages with live feeds. I was on Indigenous Natives of the North, and they didn't think it was a good idea if I show that, but that's the page that interests me when it comes to live cams. So when we're talking about deterrence, and so Churchill is renowned for its deterrence, diversionary feeding, human-bear interaction. As I said earlier, one of the things that the agency that I oversee is tasked with is developing deterrence strategies, diversionary feeding for the U.S. polar bear populations, of which there is only 2. So if you think about it, what's different, what I've been learning here in Churchill is you almost get patterns of not just migration, but a congregation of a significant amount of polar bears within a concentrated area. That's not necessarily the case in Alaska. So there are a few cases, places such as Kaktovik, which is near the northeast border between the U.S. and Canada. They have a congregation there of polar bears, and it's in due to the fact of whale hunting up there is where they dispose the carcasses and bones of the whales, so you get a concentration of polar bears. That and maybe barrow, but through the other sort of coastal villages in Alaska, we haven't experienced the high concentration or high interaction rates between polar bears and humans such as they do here in Churchill. So our partnership with PBI thought it would be a good experience for me to come and see how Churchill deals with that. And so, in the coastal villages that I represent, which there are 15, it's sporadic interaction between when polar bears show up in the villages. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And so one of the things that we're looking to develop is not just a broad or blanket-wide sort of deterrence response for the villages, because our villages are unique in so many ways, but we're looking to develop local village response plans, and we have partnerships with other conservation groups. The World Wildlife Fund and the Nannock Commission just developed our first pilot project for one of our villages to develop this deterrence plan. And rather than sort of take a top-down approach, we started at the local level, fielding their concerns, how they deal with bears in general now and what would work best for them. So I'm really here to see what a top-notch, first-class, and long-established deterrence polar bear human interaction program is like.
Thanks for that, Jack. And we're glad you're here. And Churchill is getting ready for Halloween this weekend, and there will be quite a few bodies out there lining the town and making sure that Halloween does not get canceled for the kids. But of course, the program is running all year, not just on Halloween. So I'm sure it'll be a great year. I think we are going to answer a couple questions now. One is pretty funny. So there is a restaurant in town called Gypsies, and it is pretty well known as the place to be, is what it says on their sign, and they have got wonderful food and pastries and drinks. So the question is, what's your favorite thing to order at Gypsies? I gotta say, their apple fritters are amazing. We'll have to take you. You guys have ate at Gypsies the other night. Yeah, so if anyone ever comes here, or for you non-Canadians, try a Nanaimo bar. And maybe not all of you have heard of it. As a Canadian, I was shocked when I met people that didn't know what a Nanaimo bar was. It's just, I grew up eating them. So it's a dessert bar. So if you're ever up here, try one of their Nanaimo bars too. And yeah, poutine, I guess, if you come to Canada in general. So we have another question about Arctic foxes. Now, I'm definitely not an expert on Arctic foxes, but I know a couple things about them. So the question is there a large population of Arctic fox, and do they interact with the bears? Do bears eat Arctic fox? So Arctic foxes are one of those animals that do seem to go through cycles of high abundance and then low abundance. This year, from what I'm hearing and what people are seeing, it looks like it's a lower abundance year. A lot of this is tied to the small mammal population. So small mammals also fluctuate. So this could be deer, mice, voles, things like that. And if those are low, then the Arctic fox doesn't have a ton to eat, so they're going to be low. But another issue with the Arctic fox is competition from the red fox. We are seeing more red foxes move into this area, and that is because of kind of the shifting climate regime up here. And red foxes will outcompete Arctic foxes. Red foxes are bigger. They can push the Arctic foxes out of their dens, and they can even predate them. So it is not a great situation for Arctic foxes, but we are seeing them out here this year. They are around, probably having a good time. And something cool about Arctic foxes is that we do see them following polar bears around out on the sea ice. So they are scavengers too, and they will eat the polar bear leftovers that are out there. I thought
you said you didn't know much about it.
Well, I know. I know there's a heck of a lot I don't know about Arctic fox, but I know those few little things. Okay, let's do it.
I was getting ready to come up north, and I'm from Toronto, I should say. And I heard, I know, please love Toronto. Come on. So I was trying to figure out, I heard that they have bear spray up here, to protect yourself, just in case you have an encounter with a bear. And so I went to Canadian Tire and I asked if they had bear spray, and they pointed to a shelf, and this was the little spray that I got, which everyone laughs at me for. But I think it might work for a fox or coyote.
I don't think Arctic fox is gonna go after you unless it's maybe rabid. But that's good, just to know you have that. I'm glad I'm aware of that now.
So no bear spray, though.
No bear spray. Okay, well, we've got bear spray for you here just in case. We've never had to use it. And as for if bears eat Arctic fox, I'm sure, if there was an edible Arctic fox or one, they would, but I definitely don't think that's the top choice for polar bears. Jack, do you know anything about Arctic fox that you want to say? No. Yeah, I'm with you. So I'm going to have to go do more research on Arctic foxes, you guys. Okay, so this is an interesting question and the answer is basically going to be I don't know. But it says approximately how many polar bears are left and how do we come to that number? very interesting question. We have a very rough idea of how many polar bears are in the world. The estimate right now is 20 to 25,000, but we are reworking that estimate, and maybe it's a little less, maybe it's a little bit more. And how do we come to that number? Well, shoot, it's pretty darn hard. Studying polar bears, they're just really spread out over one of the most harsh regions in the world. It's very expensive to get to them. It's very hard to even really understand what's going on in a subpopulation, let alone the worldwide population. Now, we have 19 subpopulations around the world. Some have a lot more data or information than others do. And so we really were missing gaps of data for a lot of groups of polar bears. We know that back in the 60s or 70s, the population was very decreased as a whole due to some over-harvesting once people had snowmobiles and high-powered rifles and all this sort of thing. There weren't really any controls over who was coming up to get a polar bear, but that changed in the 70s, where people got together and agreed to manage and conserve the polar bears. And with a lot of great management, the polar bear population numbers did come back to basically what we think was around normal. And now we know that in the future, and right now the issue is really climate change and not harvest. But we really don't have a great idea for how many numbers there are. And we know there's more in some populations than others, and it depends on the sea ice conditions in the area, the resources they have in the area. All those 19 different populations have, different pressures on them, different types of situations that they're dealing with. And it's just a really difficult question that a lot of scientists would love to know the answer to, maybe one day. Did you want to add?
Yeah. So one of the tough things, at least in the U.S., as I mentioned earlier, I'm involved in management of the 2 U.S. populations. With that is a lot of domestic and international policy involved in the treaty between the U.S. and Russia and the U.S. and Canada in regards to polar bears. So there are probably a few resource managers online with us today, and population estimates should absolutely found resource management strategies. And as was mentioned earlier, because of the range, habitat, difficulty of access, it amounts to immense costs for getting better metrics or understandings of the population's health of the 19 different subpopulations, which is absolutely key. In regards to the Chukchi polar bear population, we are at a very, very conservative estimate of around 2,000. That's what management decisions are being based on. And that data comes from the Russian side in a protected reserve called Wrangel Island. And the way that was arrived at was they observed a number of dens on Wrangel Island, and then sort of extrapolated out that the number of denning females, litter size, survival of litters would equal X number population of bears. That was 20 years ago, so there are great strides being made in assessing those population estimates through remote control vehicles, infrared sensing, and those types of things. So,
and I think that's a great point you ended on too, is the technology really helping us. And that's part of what we're doing in the second week of November, is a kind of STEM week where we talk about how technology is really the future of a lot of stuff. It's going to help inform a lot of our decisions, especially with polar bears and other wildlife management. The better tools that we have, the more we can understand and the better we can manage different things. And we'd really love any kids out there, young people, or any adults to, if you're technology minded or you like that sort of thing, we really need new innovators and new ideas, especially for polar bears. Help us count polar bears, help us track polar bears. Right now we have a lot of trouble tracking male polar bears. Maybe one of you will be the person that fixes that problem for us. So there's lots of opportunities out there in the technological arena. So there is a question about, actually, Jen, I'm going to ask you this question. So, Jen K. I'm going to back up.
We had a little bit of confusion.
Yeah, sorry. We have two Jens. And then we've got Jen, Jack, and Jarrett. So we've got the MBJ. So I'm the only non-J person on this buggy. But we have a question that's talking a little bit. I'd like you to talk a bit about the difference between weather and climate. Someone's asking, so they've been watching the polar bear cameras for years, and every year the winter seems to arrive sooner with colder weather more rapidly approaching. They were wondering if you could explain the connection between polar bears and climate. And then I'm asking if you can, kind of the big picture of what climate is and what we are seeing shift. And
Yeah, sure. I think it's really important to know what climate is before you talk about how it's going to change, right? So the way I like to describe the difference between weather and climate is weather is like when you get up in the morning and you go outside and you see what's going on. Maybe it's raining, maybe it's hot that day, maybe it's, you need a snowsuit. But climate is what you expect to find out that door. So in the winter, you expect that you're probably going to need your coat most days. And in the summer, maybe you can go out in your bikini. I don't know. It depends on where you live, what the situation is, but it's what you expect. And it's often defined as, the statistics of weather. So you're averaging over multiple weather days, weather events, weather years to get a sense for things. So when we talk about climate changing, we can think about that as basically being your expectations changing, right? You expect that, winter is going to be warmer than it used to be because we have more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. What actually happens that particular winter, of course, will be influenced both by the climate, what you expect, and the weather, what you get, So it could be exceptionally cold. We still have record lows, even in a climate system that's warming. So, I don't know if that helps a little bit. Yeah.
Totally. That's great. Thanks, Jen. Mm-hmm. And just, and the reason why polar bears kind of get lumped into this climate change talk is because of their link to the sea ice. And sea ice is very measurable. So it's very observable by satellites and data that we've have going back for a long time. And it's very, very clear that sea ice is declining. And the sea ice is habitat for many creatures, animals, even humans, but of course the polar bear as well. And so polar bears have kind of become this icon of climate change, which some could debate on, but that's kind of how it's become in the last few years. And they're such an interesting animal and a habitat debate. So if there's a gorilla that's endangered, we could protect the mountain that it's living on. We could put up a border. We could plant more trees. We could put maybe patrols around. But with sea ice, there's really no kind of retroactive thing that will help it stay or get it back fast enough. We really need to be more proactive with this thing and with keeping polar bears around, but also the ice seals that are up there, the walruses, the polar cod, all the creatures that live in the sea ice. We really want to keep sea ice around. And simply like Jen was saying, it's getting warmer and ice melts when it's warm. That's just pretty basic physics that I think we learn when we're kids, So that's why we're out here. We are working on the polar bear, but the bigger message is let's just be better stewards of the earth and conserve sea ice, because sea ice really impacts the world in a lot of different really neat ways. That's kind of getting more into like global maybe climate patterns, but it's a pretty cool environment. And there's a lot of people that depend on the sea ice as well in the north to keep their way of life the same. And so we want to make sure that we all work together to do that. We have a question about snowy owls, which again, is anyone here a snowy owl expert? No. All right. I'm going to answer a couple things, a few things I know about snowy owls. So the question is, and then we can maybe connect someone with we do know a snowy owl expert. It's just not me. So can you tell us more about the snowy owl? Do they live solitary lives, or do owls live in pairs that mate for life? And what do the owls eat? I'm going to tell you the limited amount I know from being out here. So there have been snowy owls out here for the last few years, and we have been seeing male and females at the same time. I'm honestly not sure if they're a pair. We kind of assume they are, but they might not be. And they are hunting mostly the small mammals out here. I would think maybe occasionally they might get a ptarmigan. So we've got these little ptarmigans out here. They're like the tundra chicken. But I think usually they're hunting the smaller mammal type things. So again, the mice and voles and stuff like that. We see them kind of perched on rocks around the tundra. And they're pretty... I don't know, they're beautiful animals. The females are larger than the males. And I think the female we saw this year was more white than the male, who had a little more brown, but also white in general. So if we can find out more about snowy owls, or maybe even at one point, maybe not this year, but in the future, set up an expert chat or something, that would be pretty cool. Okay, so question for BJ. Coming back to BJ. I like this reporting from Buggy One. It's pretty funny. I need a chair on wheels and maybe like a lapel mic so I don't have to drag this microphone around. Okay, BJ, can you describe the role of Tundra Buggies? Are they for staff, tourists, or both?
Yeah, mostly these things are for tourists. You can kind of see over our shoulder there. Where is it? Right there. There's a Tundra Buggy. Oh, yeah. And that's a full tour. Oh, yeah. Some of them are pretty quiet. I think it depends on the driver. They have seats for 40, and people come from all over the world to load up on the Tundra Buggies. They fly all the way here to Churchill. They stay in the hotels, and they come out either for day tours or multiple day tours here on the Tundra Buggy. For the folks that want to stay overnight, there's a lodge here that we all stay at overnight. It's the Tundra Buggy Lodge, and it's really more like a space station than anything else, because once we get off the ground in town, which is about an hour and a half drive from here, you don't get on the ground again. You load and unload from the back deck right into the lodge there. You walk up and down it like a train car. There's bunks in there. There's bathrooms in there. There's showers. There's a place to eat. There's even a lounge to kind of kick back and relax and watch the bears outside. So it's a pretty neat place, but there's no getting on the ground. There's a few staff buggies as well. You probably heard them, and you probably see them on the cams every once in a while. Everything on the lodge itself has to be brought out and brought back. So that includes all the food. So there's one that brings food out and back. There's one that brings luggage out and back. There's one that brings water out and back, and that one's just kind of sitting over here. We'll try to get a cam on it later. They pump water, filter, and UV filter it, and then pump it on the lodge for all the needs here. And then, of course, all the human waste gets hauled back to town on a different buggy. Yes, the poop truck. And, so that's the Tundra Buggies.
Show them our fireplace?
I don't think we can. Yeah. You can. At the back of this buggy, so Buggy 1 is different than the tourist buggies. The Buggy 15 is the one that's behind us there. It has, like I said, seats for 40 in there. This one doesn't have any permanent seats in it. You can see we're just scooting around on folding chairs.
It's a bit dangerous over those big humps if we haven't warned people enough, because you can definitely topple over in here.
If my foot gets a little heavy, I can really toss everybody in the buggy here right onto the floor. But yeah, so this is an open space, so we can use it as our broadcast studio for stuff like this and for the Tundra Connections program that we do for Polar Bears International. On the back of the buggy, you can't really see it, and unfortunately the camera's mounted, so we can't move it, but there's beds back here, and there's a bathroom back behind us. So this is kind of a special little buggy just for Polar Bears International. It's Frontiers North Adventures that loans this to us for every season, which is really generous of them.
Yeah. Well, thanks, BJ. Oh, and we did talk about this in the first live chat, but I saw some people were interested in it and asking questions. Could you just really briefly talk about the road system here and why it's in place and how we follow it?
Yeah, totally. So Fort Churchill was a military base back in, I believe, I got to go back to the book, but I think it's like the 50s, maybe the 40s, 50s, and 60s. It closed in the 60s here in Churchill, Manitoba. And the military used to do exercises out here with different vehicles. And so they created the road system. The buggies stay to that same road system to make sure we don't tear up the tundra. If we were to drive off the road, the damage we would do to the muskeg and to the surroundings would last for well beyond any of our lifetimes. So we stay on the trail so we don't muck everything up. And that's who established it, the military.
Thank you. And part of the reason that it takes so long for the plant life around here to rebound is just such a harsh growing condition up here. There's not a lot of sunlight and only a couple months where it's really kind of warm and nice, and the plants aren't getting battered by the Arctic winds and snow, and It's not cloudy, so really not a lot of growing season up here. That's why we see the trees we do see, especially kind of anywhere near the coast, are pretty small. We'll see flag trees sometimes. So those are trees that only have branches on one half of their trunk, which is pretty cool. And you can tell the direction of the wind by looking at the flag trees. So those are kind of neat. But yeah, plants, and there's a crazy diversity of plants up here, considering there's lots of different berries and mosses and willows and bushes, but they're all pretty low to the ground, and only get to grow a little bit every year. Mm-hmm. So another question about, are polar bears considered a keystone species? They are the apex predator in their environment, and as such, we do consider them a keystone species. One interesting thing we've seen in the last couple years in Hudson Bay is that with the ice breaking up differently, we have seen some orca whales come into the bay. Now, so far, this isn't, an indication of anything huge happening or any regime shifts, but if that continues to happen, it's possible there may be some competition at the top of the food chain there for polar bears and access to seals, but it really depends. There's a lot of factors there. So we're just kind of keeping our eye on it as something kind of interesting ecologically in the bay. And right now, there's not a whole lot else we can say about that. Is smell the strongest sense that polar bears rely on, and how do they compensate with the strong winds? Are they less active the stronger the winds? So polar bears have an excellent sense of smell. We believe they can smell a seal from maybe about 1 kilometer away on the sea ice. They can even smell seals under their snow layers. It really does depend on the winds, though. If the wind isn't in their favor, it's going to be hard for polar bears to smell out there. And I don't know, probably some polar bears smell better than other ones, too. So it kind of depends how on it they are. But yes, they have a very, very good sense of smell. Many bears do. And I don't know how they compensate with the strong winds. So there has been a bit of research looking at the stronger the winds, the more the ice breaks up, and the kind of different patterns that polar bears have to walk. But I'm not sure if I don't think it took into consideration their sense of smell, how that shifts with the wind. But maybe we'll know that one day. I'm not sure. It's an interesting question. And then, are they less active the stronger the winds? We do see them hunker down here when the winds are going really fast. But of course, there's not really many seals to get right now. So they're probably way more willing to just kind of lay down with their back to the wind and go to sleep. Out on the sea ice, as far as I know, from what I've heard, when it gets super, super stormy and there's no real point for hunting, they definitely will lay down. But I would assume maybe if there's chances of getting seals, or they might not want to take a break. But that's something I can't really answer on behalf of polar bears. Might depend on the bear.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting question, huh?
Yeah, it is.
Because seals don't have to stop breathing.
Right.
Just because it's blowing, they still have to go to their breathing holes, and they still have to surface. So.
I have heard that when it's really stormy, seals will kind of go to sleep in the water, and they can float, so they can keep breathing with their heads above the water, but they kind of bob in the water, and that might be a good opportunity for a polar bear to go get a seal. So I've definitely heard that, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I don't know. There's so many mysteries out there on the sea ice that I'm not going to answer or pretend to answer, but it's pretty interesting. Ooh, and this is a cool question too. So how do sows emancipate their cubs after their 2.5 years together? Do they just chase them off? If there are twins, will the twins stay together for a certain amount of time, or does everyone go off on their own? So again, this isn't something we really have hard knowledge on, but we do believe, and from what we've kind of seen, is that sows, it may be kind of a chase-off sort of deal, or when the female goes into heat, a big male comes along, helps chase the cubs away. The mother just won't give them milk anymore, or that kind of affection. So I'm sure it's not a great kind of period in a polar bear's life when their mom kind of kicks them out, but most animals have to go through that. And we actually do think that if they're siblings, they might stay together for a little while. We have seen that. As for how long, I think it might completely depend, maybe even on gender, on their bond, on what happens to them circumstantially when they get booted away from mom. But we think that often happens. They'll stick together for a little while, and then I don't know. Couldn't tell you. Maybe one day we'll have more information on that. So let's just answer a couple more questions. I know we started a bit late, but we don't want to drag it on too much past 3 o'clock. How old is the oldest polar bear you are watching or studying? How long do they typically live for? So let me think about that. Well, we know that the oldest polar bear, do you want to talk a little bit about her? You know a lot about that.
Sure. The oldest polar bear, she was in captivity. The oldest polar bear that we know about was in captivity here, or just south of here, at the Winnipeg Zoo, and she lived to be 42 years old. Her name was Debbie, and the joke that I was told is that she had a really good health care plan down there. You know, she had a whole team of vets that whenever she had anything go wrong, they would take care of her. Of course, wild bears don't have that advantage. If something happens to them, they have to either figure it out themselves or they may not make it. So that's one big limiter there in the wild polar bear's life. But yeah.
Yeah. So wild polar bears definitely don't live as long as Debbie did. We know that females can live into their mid to late 20s, maybe if you have gone a little bit past that. And male polar bears usually about mid-20s, early 20s. They have a bit of a tougher go just with all the kind of fighting for females and stuff. So sometimes they can get pretty beat up by the time they're in their 20s. Yeah, so I don't know how old the oldest one is that we're watching. I think we know of a female that's caller right now that's about, I think, 22. I might have to check on that. But we've definitely been following bears that are in their early 20s. Yeah. So this is, I'll have to look this up on our website. So someone is asking about polar bear vocalization and any indication as to how they communicate with one another. I believe we do have a recording, or there is a recording somewhere of polar bear vocalizations. I believe it was captured in a zoo. They do vocalize to each other, mostly I think moms to cubs. They will kind of talk a little bit, and then I'm not sure if males, I think they could growl at each other. I'm not even going to go there. I don't really know. I'm going to look that up. There's a little bit of research.
I was working with Megan Owen, Dr. Megan Owen of San Diego, because people were looking at, or she was looking at polar bear vocalizations, and so I took some recording equipment down. I did at Nanook Lodge south of here on Cape Tatnam, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. And it was there was a female with cubs on a food source, and then another female and cubs came in, and that's when they started vocalizing. So it seemed to be like a high stress. Females to each other. It's what it looked like. It looked like a high stress situation. It was pretty neat to capture, for sure. Yeah, but you almost never hear them vocalize around here. No.
Kind of stress maybe, or
yeah, there's just not a whole. I mean, there's nothing really going on, is there? They're just waiting for the sea ice. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not going to tell each other they're sleeping today. But they do also communicate by scent, and Megan Owen also was involved in that study that showed that males will follow female polar bear prints across the sea ice because they can actually smell that the female is in heat through her smelly footprints. And so that is a type of communication that polar bears also do, which is pretty neat.
I was listening to one snort.
What's that?
I said I was listening to one snort at another one earlier today.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Then that was maybe two males. Well, I guess it's hard to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was surprised because I have a 3-year-old at home, and you ask questions, what song does the dog make, or what song does the cat make? Okay, what sound does the bear make? And it's the growl. But I haven't heard a growl after all the bears we've seen, so it's true. I guess it must be really if there's something to fight for. But they just seem like really... I was asking this as well. Maybe this is a question from me to you, but do you think they get lonely, bears? I mean, they seem kind of solitary, like kind of on their own, especially the male bears.
Yeah. I mean, I think in general they're live solitary lives, but I feel like some of them, we have seen them before kind of almost form pairs, and whether that's because they're related, we don't know, but kind of last year we had those two that were kind of buddies, and they were hanging around each other all season and causing trouble around here. So I think maybe some do like company more than others. And we do see the large groups of polar bears that seem to be totally fine hanging out with each other. Jack, do you know of any vocalizations in Kaktovik at all when all those bears are eating at the same pile?
No, I don't remember. I don't think I was paying attention, but I was this morning, and it wasn't through the nostrils. It was more, if anybody is into linguistics, more of a fricative, meaning passing air between the tongue and the cheeks. So, yeah.
That's pretty cool. Oh, what are you pointing at, Jen?
Bears walking our way.
Is that a different one?
You heard what your show was going
Yeah.
on, so
Yeah, we're having a little cameo. Oh, BJ's getting him up. He's coming right towards us. Well, let's see if we can't get... This is a nice way to end our live chat for sure.
from your computer, and there he is.
Whoa.
Be careful now. We don't wreck another camera.
Oh yeah.
Right to it. Well,
BJ's moving the camera up so the bear. Uh oh. Oh no. And that's exactly good timing, BJ.
Did we get the zoom on the cam there?
I don't know. I think they did.
Yeah, hopefully you
Oh.
get to see some of that.
That's hilarious.
Cute little bear, huh?
Yeah, he's got ear tags, so that's a bear that has been handled before.
That's our buddy who's been around a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah, what else can you say about this?
Well, I think he is a youngish bear, and I say he, but I can't be 100% sure if it's a he or she. But it's definitely not one of the biggest ones out here. But looking pretty good. It's got a good amount of body fat for its size. Going underneath the buggy right now. It's gonna go peek out the other side.
we always have to do these checks when we go
Oh yeah.
driving.
Oh, okay. Oh, there he is. Cute. Yeah, so I guess this will be a pretty good time to wrap it up. So all our guests are staring out the window watching this bear, and we'll let you guys get back to bear watching or watching the other awesome Explore cams. I just want to thank you for joining us and for asking those great questions. We really like chatting with you guys and just kind of sharing a bit of our experience out here, and just thanks for hanging out with us on Buggy 1 today while we're finished with our educational stuff. And it's just great to have a really nice chat with our viewers. And we will have another live chat Friday morning, I think is our next one. But we'll have the cams running between then all through the weekend, and we're going to be keeping in touch. November 1st is the beginning of Polar Bear Week, which is exciting. So stay tuned for that. We're going to have lots of broadcasts, and we'll have some challenges through PBI and some fun stuff that you guys can do to get involved with polar bears. And then the week after that is our STEM week, where we will have some scientists up here that are really involved in using technology to study polar bears. So should be really, really great. Thanks for joining us. We're going to keep you updated on what's going on out here on the tundra with the polar bears, and we hope to see you soon. And thanks to all the panelists that I pulled into the live chat today. They were great. So bye.